Welcome, everyone, today for our October edition of the Scaling Montana Speaker Series. For those who don't know me, I'm Spencer Buck, the Executive Director of the Montana Ambassadors. For those who are joining for the first time or don't know who I am or the Montana Ambassadors, we're a volunteer nonprofit, nonpartisan network of area leaders in Montana, passionate about living and working in our state. Our members are basically official ambassadors for the state, helping strengthen economic development and connecting Montana businesses and innovation across the country. So we have 7 chapters in state, as well as another 4 outside of the state. And if you need any more information, check out montanaambassadors.com. This speaker series is connecting, again, Montana entrepreneurs with engineers and high-tech founders, world-class thinkers to inspire and guide us as we grow companies from the Big Sky country. So with all of that said, yet another one of our ambassadors, Joe Whittinghill, has joined us today. Welcome, Joe. If you are unfamiliar with Joe, he is a global executive with decades of experience leading enterprise-wide transformation across strategy, business, talent, culture, and organizational design. He spent 25 years with Microsoft, most recently as their Chief Talent and Learning Officer. But his career includes leading high-stakes global initiatives spanning mergers and acquisitions, organization and operating models, as well as cultural activation. He now advises for a number of organizations, Prickly Pear Unlimited, and serves as the executive advisory board for the Society of Collegiate and Leadership and Achievement. Joe is also Montana born and raised in Billings, and his journey shows us how Montana roots can lead to extraordinary impact at a global level. Anyway, our conversation today will focus on a few things, the future of work and people's strategy, things that are near and dear to Joe, a topic that touches every founder and leader building teams in a world shaped now, and for a while now, AI, rapid change, and the need for resilient cultures. So we'll start a fireside chat here with questions at the end. Drop your name in the chat if so, and feel free to add anything as we kind of move along here. Anyway, let's dive in. Joe, thank you for being here today. It's great to join this fall day with you, and we'll kind of take it from here.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. I guess first and foremost, just one of the things I like to think about is just your overarching personal journey. We had mentioned you grew up in Billings before, rising the ranks at Microsoft, but can you share your story just to kind of tell us, from the time you spent, studying at Montana to becoming kind of an influencer and leader in the technology space in Seattle?
Yeah, you bet. It's fun. I was just back from Montana. We have season tickets. I'm a Grizzly, so to all the Bobcats and everyone else, we can all get along except when we're playing each other. But I was just in Missoula for the game, and then and earlier that month, I spent 2 weeks actually doing some horseback riding and some skeet shooting and some fly fishing. So I love getting back every chance I can get. And that trip was Kalispell, Missoula, Nye, which is outside of Absaroka, and then down to Billings. So typical Montana trip. But my Montana roots are pretty deep, and I grew up in Billings, and I was one of those people that got shipped up to a cattle ranch up at Nye every summer in high school to work on the ranch and live up there. While all my friends were at the drive-in movies, I was irrigating and moving cows. But it's fun to just keep that in your blood. And I think that Montana spirit, we talk about this with others like, John Connors, of when we look at people who've worked for big companies, Montanans always kind of shine through because of the work ethic. I think it's some of these experiences we all had growing up that really allowed us to, whether it was playing football, in high school or being in student groups, at the university, it just was great training for these careers that we kind of fell into, quite frankly. Because I did undergrad at Missoula and then actually stayed in Missoula and worked at the Foundation for about 5 years, and then decided I better go get a graduate degree, and thought I was going to come back to the state full time, but ended up living out in Seattle for most of my career, and just recently get to enjoy being kind of semi-retired. I just went on the D.A. Davidson board of directors, which has been great. and I'm on a agricultural fiber startup, believe it or not, out of Kansas, where we're looking at how do we not use just wood pulp to make paper. So a little bit of how do we work on something to give back to the planet for all the carbon I put into the atmosphere flying all over the place. So it's but you never get too far from Montana or agriculture and just the great people there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a common thread or narrative when you talk amongst people in your industry, specifically from the state, is that work ethic piece. So definitely thanks for sharing that. So as you kind of think about your career progression into more, leadership roles, and sort of reflecting on your time, specifically leading the future of work and people strategy at Microsoft, what were some of the kind of overarching principles or priorities that guided your approach to people development and organizational culture?
Yeah, happy to because it's one of the things that was fun about my career is prior to my last role, I was in finance for 10 years and I was running our venture integration M&A group. And so I had 10 years of hardcore M&A global work, which was a blast because I got to go all over and meet a lot of people and visit a lot of countries. But when Satya became CEO, they asked me to move over, and really it was he had his hands full because he had to change the business strategy, the technology strategy, and the people strategy all at once. Most people on this call as leaders, you usually have to change one of your strategies, but not all three at once. And so, and for those of us who were around in the $28 Microsoft stock decade, it was existential crisis that we needed to really go after because we knew AI was coming, and at that point we hadn't even really moved to the cloud yet, and so there were a lot of business headwinds that Microsoft was facing. And so they asked me, they said, they were like, hey, can you come over? Because we need your business strategy skills and org design skills and also primarily drive the culture change effort. Because that was my MS is in organization development. And so that's kind of right up my alley. So I took a leap of faith and left what I really love doing M&A. I always laugh when you do M&A, you don't always have to be nice to people. And but when you move over doing culture work, you have to really switch your approach to life, which was probably one of my personal leadership challenges is how to go from a hardcore M&A guy to more of the culture guy at the company. So, but it was exciting. And people say, well, was this planned? I have no career path. Now that I'm semi-retired, I think astronaut and fireman are probably not going to happen at this point in my life. But we'll kind of see what's next. But it's the example of just being in the right place and then saying yes, and
Yeah,
that for me was the key. I think when people say, "Well, like what was the key?" and I said, "You just got to be ready to say yes and take a leap of faith that things are going to work out." And that really would kind of best defines how my whole time at Microsoft went. And
yeah,
frankly, I hit 25 years and I told them at 24 years, I said, I am going to be done at 25 years. And so, and it was great. And I just was over there yesterday. I ran into a bunch of Satya's directs at a retirement party for somebody and saw a
uh,
lot of my old colleagues. So just keeping in touch as they continue their climb. It's great to
yeah.
see.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I mean, I think when you think about organizational culture and development at such a massive scale, it's hard for most people to kind of fathom that. Are there anything you can take from that time that or some initiatives that you're really sort of particularly proud of leading, that kind of come to or top of mind?
Yeah, in a little bit to your last question too. What I'm really known for there is mainly now the culture work,
Okay.
because that was because I owned people strategy for the company, and then the culture transformation we had to go through, and it's hard to get the company is mostly engineers, and it is hard to get
Right.
super technical people sometimes to understand that it's really going to be mindset shifts and behavior shifts that are going to make us win and help us win and serve our customers better. And or on the sales side, going from hey, get the best deal you possibly can to saying to the customer, what is it you need and how can we be of the most help? And that may mean there's some things we shouldn't bid on, and so we would pass on because we'd say we're just not the best in that area. So
Mhm.
these principles that we started to develop were really around this customer centricity and really being customer focused. Is So rather than winner take all or just get the deal signed, it was how do we become a long term partner to our customers so that they trust us and we can understand their needs better. The other one that I helped drive was how do we just keep it simple? I was a real big overcomplicator earlier in my career, and now I'm kind of all about, hey, how do you get it down to one sheet of paper? And whether you're a big company, because I get this question in Montana a lot, is even if you're a smaller Montana company, all of these principles still work. I was just down in Billings. One of my best friends is Scott Hanser, is now the CEO of Hanser's Automotive, and we've been friends forever. And he and I were just talking about, they've gotten real big. Hanser's has gotten to be a big company, and he uses so many of the same principles. As a matter of fact, he just sent me a book to read. We kind of swap books back and forth, and the concept of can you get it onto one sheet of paper, keep it simple, understand that it really is about not only behavior change, but mindset shifts and how you think has to change if you're going to stay current. And then just the belief that it doesn't matter the size of your company or the resources, so much of when you are trying to drive change and change so that you can win, the last concept is just stick with it. And there's lots of sayings that people use, but like plan the work and work the plan. And I'm a big proponent of we're going to just stick with what we said we were going to do for 6 months. Because if you keep changing your mind to your plan, it confuses people and it confuses your customer versus saying, we're going to at least do this for 6 months, a year, 18 months, and evaluate along the way, but then make those changes in a way that you telegraph the change so people know it's coming and understand that we're sticking to the plan, but we may have to tweak it a bit.
Right. I love that. I mean, I think anytime a mindset change, especially like you said with engineers, it's a challenge. Um, so I guess that's a good segue when you think about the people strategy piece. In the era of AI, as you see this sort of automation begin to transform the workplace and how you and your team thinking about, the impact of your workforce. What do you see as the sort of key implications for the future work? Should we be worried about job security, and what should we be planning for, for the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years from now?
Yeah. So I saw Bridger was on here and Charlotte's on here. They asked me, I was on vacation, and of course when your niece asks you to give a talk, you go give a talk. So I spoke to the broadband group last summer.
Yeah.
And they had a very similar question. I said, look, bottom line is, especially if you're in Montana or a smaller company, it's really critical to get started on some AI work, not only as you as a business leader, but also just for your company to start making some moves into AI. It seems overwhelming, and that's where it's just get started. Just start playing with it. You're not going to break it.
Hmm.
Go do little experiments for yourself. Have it draft an email for you. It's great for doing research and saying compare and contrast these two things. The other day I took a spreadsheet and loaded it in to the Copilot, which is the Microsoft thing. I'm not trying to sell Microsoft, and I just said, hey, would you please give me the trends and where there's errors in the spreadsheet? And it just spit it right back out at me. But find something that's relative and relevant to your business and just start playing with it, or have it help you find, do a vacation plan. It does great vacation planning as a personal example.
Yeah.
uh, but if you don't get moving now, you're going to find that people who are doing your same work are probably going to outpace not only you personally as a leader, but also, your business. And so getting started and with some small experiments, find really repetitive things that your company does that take up a lot of time. And I bet you the AI will help make that quicker, faster, simpler, and cheaper. Because it doesn't have to be you're turning everything over to the AI, but find ways to get smart about it because it's not going away. In terms of job loss, there is going to be disruption. And so rather than be mealy mouthed about it, there will be jobs that won't go away. And so let's just go back to when the internal combustion engine came out. I mean, the entire economy had to change over time to these new engines. And so a lot of the people who were employed in, the horse industry, or the oxen industry to move machinery or goods or everything had to change. AI is going to be just like that. However, there is going to be not as much disruption as people think broadly, as much as it's going to be very specific jobs are probably going to go away or get greatly reduced. The hope is, though, a lot of the mundane work and repetitive work is being done by the AI, so it frees you up to have more time. And that may be to do work. It also may be that people don't have to work 40 hours a week anymore. Maybe it's, or in our industry, we're like, oh, if we don't have to work 60 hours a week, that'd be great. I was just talking to the head of gaming for the company yesterday, and he was like, "How is it like not to work 60 hours a week every week?" I said, "It's great." But the AI should help.
Yeah.
And again, I'll just keep saying, just start playing with it, both personally and then get a small team in your company to start coming up with what are one or two things we could experiment using AI with that could really help us save money or increase speed or quality.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I think that is, timely information for anyone starting a company right now, or even have a company that's, a legacy business, get going. If you think about some of those operations, you talk about mundane things like that. Are there any functions, you would just off the top of your head outsource? Just as you think about, some of those more mundane pieces.
Yeah, the easiest ones to look at is operations management. What's your back office? Is there
Yeah.
some quick savings you can do on your back office? Is there some quick savings you can do on reporting? And to where the AI just is kind of running in the background. The thing that I still continue to be a little surprised on is like we're using Zoom here, we use Teams, it doesn't matter. These transcripting functions will save you an enormous amount of time if you just turn it on, and it will give you either a full transcript of the meeting or say, please summarize the meeting. You're going to have to edit it, right? But the one I really love is it gives you the action items that it at least picked up on from the meeting, and
Yeah.
then you can edit that. So within 15 minutes, you can have here's the quick summary we're going to have, and here's the action items we agreed to. Just play with that and just have the thing running in the background. And it's those simple ones that are going to be quicker. I spoke to a healthcare group a couple days ago, and look, any place where we're laying hands on people, where we're treating people, what it's going to help there is with medical transcription. It's going to really help them with drug interactions and treatment conflicts, and the ability to make sure the physician or the PA or the nurse is giving the right advice. But those jobs just aren't going to go away. They're going to change. But like in legal, the big debate is, are we really going to need paralegals moving forward? Well, we'll need legal secretaries. We're going to need the lawyers, but some of the roles are going to morph. And that's where I just think everybody going into it with their eyes wide open, that the more you personally know about how to use AI, the more successful you're going to be as the jobs do start to shift.
Yeah. Well, I am a consummate note taker in most meetings, and I'm not going to lie, my Otter AI has become my new best friend. So yeah, no, it's an amazing resource. Some of that transcript stuff, and I'm like you, those actionable items that I can pull out of there, tweak a little bit, and then kind of move forward is intensely helpful. So, sort of switching gears a little bit. So I did take this into consideration. I spent a little time in the L&D space, and thinking about building a learning culture is something, is a very vast sort of array of things to think about. I know that Microsoft is renowned for fostering this sort of strong learning culture, and I'd love to know, how did you and your team work to kind of continuously build on that, and how you made that part of the fabric, or DNA of the company, as this superior learning culture.
Yeah, I think the if you're going to drive large business change and especially do it at scale,
Yeah.
it's super important for people to continue to learn new skills, get new knowledge, and the number one reframe we did is we didn't call any of it training.
Oh,
And,
nice.
and we basically said, like, look, one of the best ways to learn is just by doing, but one of the best ways is to teach is by mentoring people. And for even if it's just a peer to peer talking through, and so we did a much broader definition of what does learning mean. And learning can mean a conversation you're having with another person where they know more about something than you do, or they've figured out a quicker, faster, better way to do something, and they're then teaching you and maybe others how to do it, or where you're just stumped on, well, what's our best approach here? And you're just brainstorming. We just broadly said all of that counts as learning. But if we don't do those things, we're going to fall behind. And then what you don't want to have happen is be the people that get left behind, where it's like, look, you're no longer relevant because you're not adding to your skills. I do a lot of coaching of like juniors in high school up through about 30-year-olds. And the thing I keep saying to all of them is just keep adding skills to your. I used to use the charm bracelet metaphor, but nobody knows what a charm bracelet is anymore. So I'm like, add it to your skills toolkit or your skills bag and just keep adding new skills. And as mid-career professionals, really important to say to yourself, man, have I really added a new skill? Not that I've read a bunch of articles, but I've tried to do something differently. Or, again, go play with the AI because it can paint pictures for you. It can draft emails. It can write papers, do research. But all of that is learning. And then the turnaround of that is, and then how are you helping others learn as well? And if I'm a small business owner, and this is one of the things that Hansers does all the time, they spend a lot of time. Some of it is safety training, but they do a lot of mindset and well-being training and thinking through how do we have, like be one of the best places to work, because they're not only training on skills but also on mindsets.
Hmm.
How are we being positive in times of where there's a lot of disruption in the market, or how do we make sure that as people are having off days, we can all work through that together as a team, and then there isn't any bad feelings the next day. So all of that kind of counts. And that was where at the company where Satya basically said we're going to do that, what is famously now known as growth mindset. But the big one there was, we had to move from being know-it-alls, because smartest person in the room was highly valued for decades. Um, and then we went to this growth mindset where we had to move from knowers to learners. And so what became valued then, and as business leaders, I would suggest to you what you want to value in your companies and organizations are the people who are the best learners and who are also then taking time to teach other people.
And for I would say small to medium sized businesses, what are some of those resources? Like, is it video? Is it, you know, assessment? Is it a combination? Or what are those things that, you seem to find that worked really well, obviously at scale, but for some of these smaller businesses with, let's call it 15 to 50 employees?
So they're with the millennials and the Z's, short form video
Yeah.
is really what they prefer. And I know for those of us who are all Xers, it's just, and it isn't that the attention span is shorter. It's that multi-medium that works super well for people.
Sure.
And a lot of people are still big readers, like never forego that. But
Yeah.
this online learning where it is interactive is really the game changer. And on your phone, so much of it's available, and you don't have to spend a lot of money on it. I mean, this is
Yeah.
where I've had a couple Montana companies call and say, well, should we do left or right? And I'm like, maybe you offer everybody in the company a LinkedIn learning subscription, or
Sure.
Montana itself offers a lot of free training out of the government as well as out of the universities, and just taking advantage of it. But again, I'll go back to something I said a few minutes ago. If you as the leader are not modeling that you're taking time to learn and then saying to people, I took half an hour or 20 minutes yesterday and spent some time screwing around with AI and trying to understand it better, and had kind of a great time, with fixing a spreadsheet or doing some good research for me, that you're modeling taking time out to learn and get better. That's the unlock, because it was where Satya basically said, if we don't change our mindsets, we are going to be out of business in the next 5 years. It's not about the best technology plan. It's not about the best sales plan. It is literally, if we don't change our culture and become a culture of learning and we're spending time learning together, we're not going to make it. And that, when other CEOs talk to him, they basically say the unlock you guys did was this whole idea of becoming, learners versus knowers.
Mm, love that. Well, no, this is fascinating, and again, it's refreshing to hear that even 10 years after I was in the L&D space, that you know consumable content is still sort of king, which I think is appropriate. So yeah, so I guess I'd love to just kind of move through. We've talked a little bit about your career with Microsoft. Now you are, not working 60-hour weeks, but still doing some amazing things. You get to go to Lyon, France, and here in a little bit. But I'd love to hear more of how you're sort of going plural approach and building a lifestyle around what I think you shared with us, which is the 4-4-40 principle. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, and again share what you're up to, current?
Yeah, happy to. There's this woman who does a lot of executive coaching for people moving into retirement, and the biggest piece of advice everybody has is don't go from the full time career you have to nothing because you'll lose your mind. And so this concept she and I've been working on is called 4-4-40, which is you work 4 hours a day, 4 days a week, 40 weeks out of the year. And in a lot of days I'm working like 6 hours, big deal. But the concept is don't fill your calendar up with a bunch of junk, and it also gives you a way to say no. Like I said, I've gone on a couple of boards. The Leon thing is I teach for Pepperdine, and which is really fun. And it's a nice place to go teach. But
Yeah.
uh, um, but the idea is, how do you stay relevant and current even after you've stopped your one full-time job? And that's the concept of going plural, is you have lots of little jobs now. And that's been really great for me, just to be involved in all that stuff. I think the other part of it is, I'm devoting time to where, as I said earlier, the fiber thing is all about, the planet. The teaching is about giving back to others so they can be successful, or talking to students and doing mentoring with them. And then just staying involved, whether it's in Montana nonprofits or some of the stuff I do at the universities, or even out here in the Seattle area. It's all about how do you stay, intellectually engaged while giving back, has kind of been my methodology.
Well, and catching a few football games maybe here and there. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of that.
Good, good. Well, no, this is great and much appreciated. I would be remiss if I didn't just, ask a little bit about. I got to watch that quick interview you had with Pete Carroll, and I mean, I know he is a energetic, human, very good coach, but also has a great deal of strategy towards how he builds great teams and therefore great cultures. Can you just share a little bit about what you guys talked about? I know, defense wins football games, whatever, but what are some of the strategies you could pull from him that, allowed him to be a Super Bowl champion?
Yeah, I used to be a Bronco. When you grew up in Billings, you're a Broncos fan, and then when I moved to Seattle, I became a Seahawks fan, with Broncos still number two.
Good,
But
good.
yeah, I know Pete pretty well, and have done some work with him off and on. And the interview, if you guys want to see it, it's out on LinkedIn. But he just has a whole philosophy about how to use mindset and energy to create winning teams. And as you know, he's very up tempo.
Yeah.
He lets the players play hard. When there's beefs, I mean, these are professional athletes, and in this case, it's all males, and so there's a lot of action going on. Sometimes extracurricular after plays that happens where, and that they have to deal with. And and one of his mindset things is, give your they call it, give your buddy a break. It's like, because professional football players in particular can really get on each other. And
Yeah.
so there's this concept of, I got it. And rather than like tearing people down, how do we self coach and peer coach to build them up? And that's where, like, when you listen to the Legion of Boom guys in particular, the players were doing as much coaching of each other as the coaching staff was.
Interesting. Yeah.
And it is, again, it's a different way to coach, and that's why we used Pete with some of the work we did at Microsoft, because it's this also, it's there's the sports psychologist that the Seahawks used, Michael Gervais. I'm a big fan of his work, and it's
Yeah.
this idea of clean thinking, clean eating, clean movement, and just making sure that you're kind of taking a well-rounded approach to your life. And that's what Pete and I spent time talking about, is like, because he had to do a turnaround with the Seahawks at that point. He's going to try again to do it there, but some of these principles we talked about earlier remain true. Like, how do you focus on positive versus dwelling on the negative? How you do you have an open mindset, or growth mindset, as we called it,
Yeah.
and how do you continuously be a learner, as you're moving forward and being successful? And whether it's sports, or you're talking to people who are in the symphony, or whether you're talking to somebody who has a small business, so much of this is not always about effort. Sometimes it's around mindset that is where the big unlocks come from.